Good morning. Today I'm talking with Suzan Briganti, all the way from Silicon Valley in the States. Suzan is the founder and CEO of a tech company that is producing some wonderfully amazing next generation tech tools to enable organizations to identify and capitalize on their entrepreneurial talent. So here we are, and we're just going to have a conversation. And I would just love to invite Suzan to tell us a little bit about herself first, and then tell us about what has inspired the birth of Swarm Vision. So over to you, Suzan. Tell us about you and Swarm Vision.
Well, good morning, Dr. Irena. It's lovely to be with you, and thank you for this opportunity. It's amazing how close I feel with the amazing technology we have now, just recording this interview. So I was actually raised in Silicon Valley since before it was called that, which is not that long ago. I'm not that old. But I was raised in a rather unique way. My father is really my big inspiration. He has a PhD in physics and went to Reed College, which became famous when Steve Jobs later dropped out and did what he did. And when I was growing up, my father worked for Stanford Research Institute, and he has hundreds of patents. So the way he raised us, at the time, we knew nothing about it. He never used the word innovation or entrepreneurialism or anything, but he just had very strong viewpoints about how to raise children. And he inherently wanted us to be innovators, and all four of us are. And so I can give you some examples of that upbringing, but the timeliness of that really explains what we're doing now. I had just sort of noticed the world is sort of pivoting towards what we know. And there's this desire and this need to understand what makes an entrepreneur. And 83% of large organizations fear and feel that they're at risk of disruption. I don't know about the other 17%. I think they're probably delusional. And so there's this thirst to understand how to drive entrepreneurialism. And we wanted to bring science to this problem, which we've done. Yep. And then the beauty of software, make it something that anyone can access anywhere in the world and become more successful as an entrepreneur and have large organizations able to drive entrepreneurialism at scale. So that's really the inspiration and what we've been up to.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. So can you be a little bit more specific about what you actually do in progressing that, and what does Swarm Vision actually provide? So is that okay to give us a little bit more detail specifically about how you drive entrepreneurialism now through Swarm Vision? And then after that, we can perhaps talk about the gap that this fills within the market, because you're very new. You are at the cutting edge of the next generation of tech tools that is going to just crack open this whole area of being able to identify and capitalize on the entrepreneurs that will drive organizations forward and help them to become successful in future ready. So just tell us a little bit more in detail about Swarm Vision.
Sure. Well, so the most important thing probably to premise is that when I had the epiphany that large organizations needed and wanted a solution like this and lacked a solution like this, the first thing we did was we spent about 6 months looking to see if anyone had already solved it, and reading till our eyes bled, everything we could about, research on innovation skill and talent and entrepreneurialism and entrepreneurialism. And we concluded that there really wasn't any broad scale research. So we then conducted what turns out to be, at least so far, the world's largest study of serial successful innovators. And by that, I mean both half entrepreneurs and half intrapreneurs. So we very much wanted to be able to articulate the differences and similarities between those two. And we then, so that led to a very clear, completely data-driven understanding of what the common traits are of successful entrepreneurs, and who are basically those traits that are highly correlated with success from innovation. Such as profitability and hypergrowth and international expansion and IPO and acquisition, all of the sort of evidence of success. So then we spent the last 2 years building a SaaS, a software as a service platform that enables large organizations to do 4 things. There's 4 steps, okay? The first one is to identify innovation talent. So if you're a large organization, whether you have 10,000 or 100,000 or more employees, you're going to have some of this talent, even though you haven't been necessarily hiring for it. It just is going to be there because it is distributed in humanity. And by the way, it's not concentrated in R&D or in IT. So that's a really big epiphany. So if you're counting on those people to pull you out, it's not all there.
I'm so pleased to hear you say that. Because yes, because innovation can be right across the board. It's not specifically about just scientific breakthroughs or just technology. So it's not just an R&D, it's not just an IT. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Keep going.
No, it's great. And it's not, I want to also mention that at the core of entrepreneurialism is innovation, right? And innovation is not about just invention.
Exactly.
And so there's all these other skills, and I can get back into that if you're interested in what the 8 skills are. So the system, it's really a platform, does 4 things. One is identify the innovation talent, whether it's in your existing organization or in your candidate pool. And we have customers using both dimensions of that. The second is to use the power of software to design stronger teams. Humans are pretty weak at this. We can't help but default to the familiar. So by letting the software suggest teams based on the specifications you set, you're going to get stronger teams, and you're also going to be much more democratic. So this is a lovely sort of side benefit. We don't enable anyone to recruit based on gender or age or familiarity, okay? It's all based on what you can do. So I love the democratizing aspect of that. So that's the building team. The third piece is upskilling. So we've released on customers' insistence SWARM innovation training. And it builds these same 8 skills that we've identified as being absolutely predictive of outcomes. So that's about a 60-day online course. And then the fourth piece is the use of this knowledge and this research to really work on your culture. Because let's say you do get to a point where maybe instead of 2% of your organization are entrepreneurs, you get to a point where 30% are, but you're actually discouraging them with the way you react to their behaviors. The culture piece is not enough to create entrepreneurs, but it is essential to ensure that they thrive. That's the fourth piece. So that's really how the system works. It's how customers are using it. And it's just been an incredibly exciting journey. And very excitedly, we were very excited to be named HR Tech Product of the Year last year.
Oh, congratulations.
So, we were like this tiny startup at this vast show, the biggest show in the industry, and couldn't believe it when we were named Product of the Year.
Oh, congratulations. That is so exciting. That really does validate this whole idea that that what SWARM is offering is definitely timely, and it's an idea whose time has come. And as Victor Hugo reminds us, that there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. So congratulations on that wonderful achievement. That's great. So would it be possible to maybe share some general examples of how this has been used within particular organizations? I understand sometimes we're not always able to talk about specific organizations and what we've done with them, but can you give us a rough, broad brushstroke idea?
Absolutely. Well, all of our customers are really using it in the ways we just described in terms of the 4 aspects, but sometimes they're more focused on the training, other times they're more focused on the recruitment and hiring. So there's little sort of variances in terms of emphasis, but I'll talk about one of our newest customers that I'm extremely excited about. It's the United States Navy.
Oh, okay. Wonderful.
So I'm so thrilled. And I'm a huge patriot, so don't get me started. But, the background of this is that a lot of innovation does come from government. And whether people want to believe that or not, there's all the excitement and focus on startups, but we would not have an internet, and we wouldn't have an internet without the government. Just the expense of fundamental research is such that we need to acknowledge that. And yet in the military, we've been in more or less peacetime in the sense that we haven't had any massive global wars. They've been called limited intensity conflicts, or LICs. in Iraq. We're talking about the US here, and Iraq and Afghanistan. So what happens in that sort of a situation is innovation actually decreases. So when you really look at the pace of innovation in the Navy, it has been slower the last 20, 30 years than it was during wartime. Now, we don't want to have wartime to fix that, but we want to be ready for the next conflict. And it's very difficult to predict what kind of conflict that will be. So the way the Navy is using SWARM is starting with their basic and advanced research group within NAVAIR, which is the Advanced Aircraft and Avionics group. And they're identifying the innovation talent they already have. And then they're putting a cohort of those individuals through SWARM innovation training. And then we're going to be designing teams around the proposals that are approved or green lighted. So it has massive multi-billion-dollar potential impact. And so we're extremely excited. It brings everything together. And this has moved pretty quickly, actually. So,
okay. Okay. That's a very exciting development for SWARM. Do you have any examples from, say, the corporate world?
Oh, very much. So yes,
Yeah.
actually the first 2 years, and so until the Navy, we really all been working with corporates. And
Okay.
so they tend to be the bigger or one of the biggest players in each of their sectors. So for example, in consumer packaged goods, we work with Johnson & Johnson. In financial services, we work with BNY Mellon, and they are the largest bank in America. They actually hold sovereign wealth of nations.
Wow.
HP, which is the largest PC maker in the world. So Hilton just became a customer, and one of the largest tourism and travel brand names in the world. So we tend to start at the top and work our way down as a philosophy in life.
Okay.
You don't get to those names by starting with your local car dealership. We start big, and that's one of the things I really want to get across. If there are any female founders listening to this interview, not to be incremental, be bold, go for what you really want from the start. So that's what we tend to do.
Excellent. It's wonderful. Very excited for you, Suzan. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today and just giving us that little snapshot into what SWARM is doing. And of course, if people want to find out more about SWARM and bring it to Australia, there's a few ways that we can do that. You can look at your website. So if you just Google SWARM Vision, they'll come across your website. But it's also very exciting that we're forming a partnership, and that I'll be your channel partner in the Australia Pacific region. So if people want to know more, by all means, if you're in Australia, reach out to me, and I'll be able to give you some further information. In the meantime, we're going to read your article in Intrapreneur magazine, Suzan, and we're going to see your wonderful face on the cover. And perhaps we'll do another one of these interviews down the track again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We're so excited to have you as our partner.
You're welcome. Looking forward to it. Okay. Surprise, we're back. It's because after I finished the interview with Suzan, we were just chatting and she was saying such wonderfully wise words. I thought, no, let's just restart the interview and give you this extra little bit. So you're getting a bonus, everyone. Okay, so here we go. Suzan, can you just tell us a little bit about the gap that SWARM Vision's tools can address? And just tell me what you were just telling me a moment ago, because it's really interesting. So we're continuing. Over to you, Suzan.
Sure. Okay, so the gap that we saw in the market, which is why we've done what we've done, is that, I was, prior to this, my last startup was innovation consultancy, and we were very successful and worked with huge organizations, and that's what I was doing when I had the epiphany about this unmet need. And what I noticed was that the prevailing approaches, there were two prevailing approaches that large organizations were taking to become more innovative. And one was about process. So basically, let's teach everyone a process like design thinking or lean startup or agile. And the other default that was going on was a sort of balance sheet approach, which is let's all invest in startups or maybe put several hundreds of millions of dollars into corporate VC funds, things like that. So underlying those two approaches are fallacies, okay? So the fallacy in the first one is that everyone is equally innovative if they just follow a process. And the second fallacy is that large companies or large organizations can never be innovative, so they just need to go outside. Only startups can be innovative. So I completely disagree with both of those beliefs. And the reason we disagree is that we conducted this research, and it showed that innovation skill is broadly distributed in the population, but not evenly distributed, okay? So just like sports or music, there seems to be sort of innate proclivities, and we don't know what percentage of it is nature. There is supposedly DNA that makes you, less accepting of the status quo, but that's certainly only one piece of it. And how much of it is nurture, like the way I was raised, with my father basically refusing to buy me commercially designed toys because he thought that would direct our play too much. And he just said, go outside and build things. And we could have all the materials and tools we needed, but we had to pitch them for it. So how much of that was nature? We don't really know. But by the time you're, an adult, it's sort of there, we don't know exact percentage, 70, 80% of it is kind of fixed. So what we're working on is identifying people who have, for any reason, any of these proclivities or abilities, whether through nature or nurture. And then we've proven that we can actually improve people 10 or 20 percentage points through swarm innovation training. Because it's honing in on the things that actually really matter in terms of outcomes. So the gap we're filling, I would say, is the talent gap. Okay, it's like the third leg of the stool, right? Process, okay. Balance sheet, okay. Talent. And it could even end up being the biggest leg of the stool but certainly innovation only comes from humans, only.
Yes.
Humans make machines and software only comes from humans. So we, and I think the ability to find this talent and develop it is so important because Horizon 1 innovation, which is incremental innovation, has an average ROI of 10%. Horizon 2, which is adjacent innovation, has an average ROI of 20%. And disruptive, or Horizon 3, has an average ROI of 70%. And continuous improvement, which is what a lot of large organizations are primarily obsessed with, has an ROI of about 3 to 5%. So if you really want to move the needle, you can't just do agile and do the same stuff faster. You have to do different stuff. And that's what we enable organizations to do efficiently, systematically, and scalably.
And ideally, organizations need to be working across all horizons for long-term sustainability, to not just focus on one or the other, but have all of them in different stages of development and progression.
And to understand that the way they manage those things and the kinds of people they need to deploy on those different horizons are very different. So we're a key tool in that whole strategy. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for that addendum, Susan. Appreciate that. Thanks, everyone. You just got an extra bonus there. All right, we're actually finishing for real this time.